Long ago, when the peaks of the Tian Shan still kept their ancient secrets and the steppes knew no peace, a child was born whose name would outlive every empire around him. His father, Jakob, was a man of wealth and standing, respected among his people, feared by none, envied by many. Yet for all his fortune, his house had no heir. He prayed, he waited, and finally the sky answered. The night Manas was born, the old storytellers fell silent mid-song. Wise men looked at the child and told Jakob only this: guard him. He did not come for you alone. Jakob made a decision that puzzled everyone around him. Despite his wealth, he gave his son to a simple family, strangers, common people in a village far from luxury. He wanted his son to know the weight of bread earned by hand, to know the smell of soil, the silence of mountains, the cold of open steppe at dawn. He believed what few rich men ever believe, that a true leader is not born in silk tents. He is born among people, among their suffering and their hope. Manas grew up among shepherds and hunters. From his earliest years, he walked into the steppe alone, learning to read the tracks of animals, to listen to the wind, to understand what the mountains said when they said nothing. The village children followed him, not out of fear, but out of something they could not name. Even as a boy, there was something in him that made grown men stop and stare. His strength was unlike anything the village had seen. It is told that as a young teenager, still without a real weapon to his name, he stopped a runaway horse with his bare hands. Another time he drove off a wolf pack alone to protect the herd, but it was never only strength. Wisdom woke in him early. He knew when to speak and when to be still. He listened to elders the way others listened to music, with everything he had. His first taste of injustice came before he ever held a sword. The lands around him bled from the raids of the Kalmaks, armies that showed no mercy to peaceful villages. Manas saw the ash where homes had stood. He saw women weeping and old men broken. Something shifted inside him then, deep and permanent. He understood his life did not belong only to him. When Manas came of age, his fame moved faster than he did. His first battles were swift and absolute. He fought not for glory, not for plunder. He fought so that his people could live on their own land. And people came to him, from different clans, different valleys, different bloodlines, each carrying a wound, each carrying a hope. Around him formed the 40, the Kyrk Choro, Almambet, Chubak, Sergak, Baimirza. These were not simply soldiers. They were men with histories, with scars, with names worth remembering. And Manas held them together, not through fear, not through command alone, but through respect, through example, through the rare quality of a man who makes others want to be better than they are.
The first great test came against local warlords who taxed the Kyrgyz tribes into ruin. Manas struck fast and without hesitation. The oppressors fell. Word spread across every valley. More men came. More clans joined. What had been a band of warriors began to look like something larger. The beginning of an army, the beginning of a nation. Then came the rivers. Manas led his riders across flooding waters under enemy fire, horses crashing through currents, arrows cutting the air. He led archers to the high ridges above enemy columns, where they rained destruction from above, before the enemy even knew where the threat was coming from. He drove his cavalry into night ambushes through mountain passes, silent, precise, devastating. Battle after battle, season after season. He fought in snow-covered passes where breath froze mid-air and robes turned to ice. He fought in summer dust storms where no man could see 3 steps ahead. He fought at river crossings at dawn, the low sun behind him blinding his enemies. He fought in narrow canyons where only 2 men could stand abreast, and he put his best 2 there. He was not only brave, he was a strategist. He read terrain the way scholars read texts. He understood that the moment before a battle, who stands where, who sees what, who is tired and who is hungry, often decided more than the fighting itself. His greatest challenge was not the battlefield, it was the meeting tent. The Kyrgyz tribes had fought each other for generations, old feuds, old wounds, old pride. Manas travelled from clan to clan, from chief to chief, and he spoke to each of them not as a conqueror but as an equal. He said, what no one before him had said plainly enough to be heard. While we fight each other, the enemy takes us one by one. Together we become something that cannot be broken. They listened. Clans that had been enemies stood under the same banner. It was a feat of will and words, as extraordinary as anything he ever did with a sword. When the united army finally moved, the ground shook under the hooves of 10,000 horses. The campaign against the Kalmaks was long and merciless. Manas fought in the front line, not because he was fearless, fear he knew, but because he understood that a commander who hides behind others has already lost something that cannot be recovered. His horse Ak-Kula, white as new snow, carried him through chaos that would have broken any ordinary man. The Kalmak lines broke. Their commanders fell. And when the sun began its descent, the answer was clear across the entire field. His name was now known beyond the Kyrgyz valleys. Neighboring peoples spoke it. Traders carried it along their routes. Enemies said it quietly, hoping it would not reach the wrong ears. He had become something beyond a warrior. He was still alive, still breathing, but already larger than any single life could contain. But no campaign lasts forever. No army, however united, can march without end. The losses were mounting. Among the fallen were faces Manas knew by name, men who had ridden with him since the beginning, men whose voices he would never hear again around the fire. He returned home not only as a victor, but as a man who had paid the full price of victory. The weight of the dead sat on his shoulders alongside the glory of the living, yet he did not stop. He could not stop. There were still borders to defend, still people who looked to him when the night felt too long and the enemy too close. Manas rode on, because that is what he was. Not just a warrior, not just a commander. He was the answer his people gave to everything that tried to erase them. And still the enemies came. New threats rose where old ones had fallen. Every border was a question that someone, somewhere, was willing to answer with blood. Manas answered them all, on horseback, in the snow, in the dust, in the dark. Not because